Born into a noble family on the planet Sereno 102 years before the Battle of Yavin, Dooku was taken to the Jedi Temple in his youth and quickly became one of the more intriguing prospects in the entire order. Although training under multiple masters, Dooku eventually became the Padawan to the Grand Master of the Order, Yoda. After acing his trials and being granted knighthood, Dooku gained a reputation for his mastery with the blade and incredible power with the Force. Renowned as a great diplomat and teacher, Dooku was eventually invited to join the High Council, but declined. While highly respected, Dooku was outspoken and often criticized the corrupt Republic for their practices. These traits can also be seen in his teachings. His first Padawan, Qui-Gon Jinn, also gained a reputation for being a maverick. As the years went on, and more Jedi died due to the Republic's failings, Dooku began to question his place in the Order, and felt the Jedi's ideals weren't compatible with the failing Republic. After the disastrous Battle of Galadran and the death of his former pupil, Dooku made his decision and left the Order, becoming one of the infamous Lost 20. Soon after, Dooku was approached by the Dark Lord of the Sith, Darth Sidious. Realizing their vision for the galaxy wasn't so different, and fascinated by Sith lore, Dooku joined Sidious, becoming his new apprentice. Dubbed Darth Tyranus, Dooku would return to Sereno and begin rounding up disgruntled senators and financiers fed up with the Republic's corruption and inability to act. Eventually instigating the Clone Wars, Dooku became the public face of the Confederacy, while Sidious, who was in reality Supreme Chancellor Palpatine, militarized and centralized the Republic's political power, planting the seeds for the rise of the Empire. During the war, Dooku slayed many of his former peers, and trained some of the most proficient Jedi killers of all time, including Asajj Ventress and General Grievous. At the twilight of the war, Dooku once again faced off against Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker. Although he bested Kenobi, he was beat by the Chosen One. It was at this point he realized he was nothing more than a pawn in Sidious's game, who ordered Skywalker to behead his former apprentice. Dooku's replacement came days later, as Skywalker joined the Sith under the name Darth Vader and witnessed the rise of the Empire. Dooku was soon forgotten and only remembered as a failed political revolutionary and a traitor. Born on the planet Dire, Kyp Durron knew nothing but conflict from a young age, and watched his parents be arrested when he was only 8. After going on an anti-imperial rampage, Durron was imprisoned in the harsh spice mines of Kessel. After years of hardship, he was rescued by Han Solo in 11 ABY, and taken to Luke Skywalker's newly founded Jedi Paraxium on Yavin 4. While training, Durron's body was eventually overtook by the spirit of the famed Sith Lord, Exar Kun, in an attempt to destroy the New Order of Knights. After a long battle, Kyp banished Kun's influence and began a long quest for absolution, which led him to becoming Skywalker's most talented pupil and one of the first Jedi Masters of the new Jedi Order. However, the galaxy would not see peace, as in 25 ABY, the Yuuzhan Vong attacked the known galaxy. Durron was one of the first to meet the threat, his policy of aggressive action only enhanced by the Vong menace. His skill and power were noted by all throughout the war, and even managed to catch the eye of the Dark Lady of the Sith, Lumaya. At the end of the war, Kyp was recognized as one of the greatest Jedi of his generation, and was granted a seat on the newly founded Jedi High Council. Despite having a differing philosophy compared to most Jedi, and considered to be a maverick in his own right, Durron served his order well, and helped triumph against the rise of Darth Caedus. At the time of his death, Count Dooku was an elderly 83-year-old human male whose physical prime had passed many years ago. Despite his older age, Dooku was in amazing shape for a man of his years, able to keep up with combatants that were much younger, and was described as being in better shape than men half his age. This can be seen when he easily dispatched Jedi Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker during the Battle of Geonosis, not tiring one bit. Dooku's physical traits were developed around his personal fighting style, resulting in the Count having excellent speed and dexterity. He also featured sneaky good agility, outmaneuvering Kenobi in their final duel aboard the Invisible Hand, and danced circles around Ventress and Savage. Dooku, in my eyes, features impressive strength and stamina as well for a man of his age. He was able to overpower Anakin on multiple occasions, Skywalker being a Jedi who possessed incredible strength. While many are quick to point out Dooku's lack of stamina, in my eyes, it isn't as big of a hindrance as many make it out to be. This is a man who has held up against Yoda, Mace Windu, and an enraged Anakin Skywalker, the last two known for their aggressive, hard-hitting styles. That all being said, it is still a target, and after a long enough period, Dooku would tire and be left severely weakened. Dooku was also hardly affected by dark side degradation, and only occasionally sported the signature yellow eyes, common amongst Sith Lords. A human male roughly 47 years of age at the end of the Second Galactic Civil War, Kyp Durron was in the final years of his physical prime. A true master of his body, he featured great endurance, resilience, and the devastating combination of highly advanced speed and strength. His resilience has been a staple throughout his life, able to survive the brutal conditions of the spice mines on Kessel as a young adult. And as a knight, he was able to take multiple shots from the dark side creature the Leviathan and continue to fight. However, to me the most impressive display of resilience came during his days on the front lines of the Yuuzhan Vong War, able to survive battle after battle, in a war that killed over 300 trillion people. Kyp's speed, as stated earlier, was also highly advanced. He managed to speed blitz 3 stormtroopers, and used it to outmaneuver the Leviathan. But most impressive was his strength. During one of the final battles of the Vong War, Durron entered a tug-of-war against a Vong Slayer. Slayers were incredible physical beings, described in the Essential Guide to Warfare as compact and heavily muscled. They had scarlet skin that was impervious to lightsabers and blaster bolts, and were gifted with fighting reflexes faster than the greatest warrior champions at the time. While at the end of the day he may be towards the end of his physical prime, Durron still featured all the attributes necessary for a powerful warrior. This round is pretty clear in my eyes. Both combatants have displayed their physical might, whether in single combat or on the battlefield. But where Durron is in his physical prime, Dooku's physical prowess is nowhere near where it used to be. The Count would not be some helpless old man, however, and would be able to contend for a time. But only for a time. As Durron begins to pound Dooku with power strikes, and the longer the battle goes on, the more the tide shifts in Durron's favor. Even if the Count mustered up some good shot, Durron would be able to take it and continue, whereas Dooku would just wear down more and more. Although in good shape for his age, Count Dooku just can't contend against the much younger and stronger Jedi Master. Kyp Durron gets the edge. Count Dooku became the finest lightsaber duelist of his generation, and with his natural talent with the blade, was heralded as one of the most gifted duelists in the entire Jedi Order. Before his fall to the dark side, he was considered to be a part of the Big Three in the Order, and could only be matched by Mace Windu and Yoda in a pure battle of swordsmanship. However, by the end of the Clone Wars, this isn't so much the case. Driven by a competitive spirit, Dooku chose to specialize in the classical dueling style of Makashi. Also known as the Contention form, Form 2 Makashi was developed for the purpose of lightsaber-to-lightsaber combat. Described as elegant and focused, Makashi was based on balance and footwork to outmaneuver opponents. Fluidity, precision, and economy of motion were relied on rather than strength, with Form 2's blade work heavily utilizing jabs and light cuts, rather than hack-and-slash movements. While not mastering any other styles, Dooku studied and was capable of teaching all the traditional forms of lightsaber combat. This knowledge gave Dooku the skill to recognize an opponent's style and counter it in the most effective way possible. His chosen weapon also reflects his preferred style. Shortly after becoming a Jedi, Master Dooku spent days studying Jedi Archive records and eventually settled on a weapon worthy of a Count. The weapon featured a curved hilt that allowed the saber to fit better in his hand, allowing for superior finesse and precise blade control. The emitter featured both an angular blade guard and a thumb trigger that activated the weapon's dual-phase setting, shortening the blade for close-quarter surprise attacks. However, Dooku has never been seen utilizing this feature as either a Jedi nor Sith, making its relevance negligible. Originally, Dooku's saber was powered by a single blue Adagan crystal, but come his ascension to Sith Lord, he replaced it with a single red synthetic crystal as its focusing lens. This gave him more cutting power, at the expense of maneuverability. As noted by Jedi Battlemaster Sin Dralig in the Essential Guide to the Force, Masters of Form 2 develop unique offenses and defenses, and trained studiously against having their weapon taken or damaged. Dooku was no exception, and utilized a unique moveset with no textbook maneuvers. Unlike the aggressive in-your-face offense of Asajj Ventress or General Grievous, Dooku was much more conservative. It was a sophisticated assault with incredible precision. He'd work his way into one's guard, bypassing and undermining it until he disarmed or finished you once and for all. He also has been able to incorporate physical strikes and force-based attacks into his lightsaber sequences, using the Form 6 draw close technique often. This technique saw the user telekinetically pull their opponent into lightsaber range, and he has killed using such a move. Another offensive tactic utilized by the Count was Dun Mak, which was a form of combat that used distraction and doubt, usually through taunting, in conjunction with lightsaber combat. He used this heavily during combat, the most glaring example being against Kenobi in Attack of the Clones.
Master Kenobi, you disappoint me. Yoda holds you in such high esteem. Surely you can do better.
However, this also cost the Count his life against Skywalker, as the young Jedi fed into his hatred and utilized a brilliant finesse move against him. Defensively, Dooku was a very patient fighter. He wouldn't attempt to stonewall an opponent, instead relying on redirection and deflection, parrying a strike, and then using his enemy's own movement against them. He did this until his foe got frustrated and sloppy, presenting an easy opening for the Count to take advantage of. While Dooku was defending, he was also analyzing, watching his opponent's moveset until he found a flaw in his opponent's lesser style that he could quickly and effectively exploit. The Count's overall approach was much different from many fighters of his day, and he was never strictly attacking nor defending in a given situation. He used a push and pull technique, getting himself away from an incoming attack and then immediately counterattacking an exposed weakness. Tactically, the Count was very skilled. He was able to manipulate his environment around him, usually using a piece of debris to telekinetically throw, and as stated earlier, was a master of psychological warfare. His overall mastery of Makashi can be seen in the ways in which he compensates for the form's inherited weaknesses. Able to take on multiple adversaries and deflect blaster fire with relative ease. Another thing going for Dooku is Form 2's relative rarity. As the years went on, and the Sith were believed to be extinct, saber-to-saber combat was relatively dead. Instead, the Order placed a focus on blasters and defending against common thugs, not lightsaber-to-lightsaber combat. At the end of the day, Dooku knew himself and his style, inside and out. He didn't use any unnecessary movements and made sure that every inch, every saber strike, and every slight movement served an overall purpose at a given time, not wasting energy and being grossly effective. A renowned swordsman, Kyp Durron was one of the finest warriors of the New Jedi Order, and utilized a unique style that was effective in any given situation. He possessed a high level of raw skill, which led him to becoming one of, if not Luke Skywalker's best student. In the novel Backlash, Skywalker reckoned that Durron was on a skill level with the likes of Kyle Katarn, an esteemed battle master, and was noted to be one of the best duelists in the NJO. Darth Tyranus himself, one of the strongest Sith Lords in galactic history, also considered Durron a threat to his power. Like most Jedi during this time, Kyp was trained in the three rings of defense. Introduced into the Order by Jedi Master Cam Solusar, the three rings served as the main introductory style for all Jedi at the time. This style soon became the main foundation in which all members of the NJO built their styles from. Each ring dealt with dueling from a different range. The outer ring dealing with wide power attacks, the middle ring for quick strikes and counters, and the inner with close quarters combat. While simplistic in nature, when elevated, the style in the right hands could be incredibly effective, an example being Durron's peer, Corran Horn. Unlike Horn, however, Durron's primary discipline was not the three rings. Although never confirmed in any source, throughout the NJO novels, Durron is often described as a power duelist with exceptional skill in blast affection, giving me the impression that he's a master in both variants of the fifth form of classical lightsaber combat, the Jem-So and Xian. Also known as the Way of the Krayt Dragon, Form 5 was developed by practitioners of Form 3, who felt the defensive-minded form unnecessarily extended time spent in combat by forcing its users to wait for an opportunity to strike, rather than create their own openings. Xian was more adept at blocking blaster bolts than for blade-on-blade combat, whereas the Jem-So was developed later, and was specifically intended for use in lightsaber combat. Both Xian and the Jem-So were designed to use an opponent's attack against them, as evidenced by Xian's focus on returning blaster bolts to their origin, and the Jem-So's emphasis on immediate counterattacks. To use such a style, Durron was equipped with a standard Jedi lightsaber. It featured a design common to its era, and it didn't have many distinguishable traits. Powering the weapon was a single, purple crystal. While its origin is unknown, we can infer that it is not synthetic, resulting in a blade that had more maneuverability, at the expense of cutting power. Offensively, Kyp fought very similarly to his master. While an aggressive fighter, he applied his attacks in a controlled and precise manner, rather than just pounding away at an opponent. His strikes were powerful and direct, using a deadly combination of power and finesse to work his way into a foe's guard. He was also skilled in incorporating force-based attacks into his lightsaber sequences, even using this ability to great extent against Luke Skywalker during their spar on Endor. Defensively, Kyp took the Form 5 philosophy of immediate counterattack to heart. He'd parry an incoming attack, and immediately follow up with a barrage of calculated and powerful attacks. This approach allowed Durron coverage in any situation, whether on the battlefield against multiple Vong, or in singular combat. As a tactician, Durron was very clever, and much like Dooku, used his surroundings against his opponent. This can be seen when Kyp moves an unused freighter in the midst of a space battle, and throws it at the Yuuzhan Vong coral skippers. In conclusion, Kyp Durron was an incredibly gifted swordsman, and took a style known for its power and aggression, and converted it into one of precision and efficiency. Underestimating this Jedi Master would certainly lead to a quick ending. Unlike the first round, this one is incredibly difficult to determine. Both Dooku and Kyp take their styles to the highest level and are more than capable of competing with the best duelist of their day. The two combatants are also very calculated and precise in their approach, limiting potential holes in their guard. While on paper Durron's use of Form 5 has the advantage over Dooku's Makashi, I don't believe this to be so cut and dry. Dooku has extensive knowledge on all of the forms, and he has many fallback options if needed. This can be seen clearly in his duel with Anakin, getting the better of him until he provoked the Chosen One. If Dooku changes his approach, Durron is also too skilled a fighter not to be able to adapt and counter whatever the Count throws his way. As tacticians, they're both equals, and both chain and force-based attacks into their sequences, while being able to defend against such attacks. While Dooku's preferred weapon could catch Kyp off guard, with the blade's angle changing, it isn't enough where I can give the Count a definitive advantage. These two combatants are just too evenly matched. Their raw skill, refinement, and tactics are all within a hair compared to the others. No edge will be given. While a complete master of the blade, Darth Tyranus was also an incredibly powerful Force wielder. As a Jedi, he spent decades studying Jedi lore, and soon was regarded as one of the most powerful Jedi in the history of their order. After his turn to the dark side, he used his vast knowledge to learn the darkest secrets of the Sith in only a short decade. An incredibly impressive feat, considering it took many a lifetime to learn the knowledge the Count mastered. Like all Force wielders, Dooku was able to use the Force to augment his physical traits. This allowed him to move at incredible speed, perform Force-assisted acrobatics, and finally, hold up in intense lightsaber duels. In terms of telekinesis, Dooku was a complete master. As a Jedi, he taught many classes in the art, and as a Sith, used it with incredible power. He was more than able to lift and throw large objects, manhandle opponents, and even manifest Force waves, taking out dozens at a time. An even more impressive display from the Count was his ability to use the rare ability of self-levitation. While also able to use the saber throw technique, such as he did to Yoda on Geonosis, Dooku thought little of it, believing that one's lightsaber should never have to leave one's hand. Dooku used telekinesis in an incredibly smart and calculated manner, often probing one's defense for an opening, or taking advantage of his surroundings. After becoming a Sith Lord, he also used telekinesis to strangle his opposition, and it quickly became one of the Count's favorite attacks. The most glaring example being his final duel with Kenobi, where he tore through the Master's guard and incapacitated him. Like many Sith Lords, Dooku was a practiced hand in the use of Force lightning, and its power was strong enough to kill on impact. However, he preferred this ability much more for torture. As a telepath, much like all of his abilities, Dooku was highly adept. He was more than capable of using the Jedi mind trick, and was able to take it to the next level, possessing skill in beast control. Beast control was an ability in which the user could calm and tame beasts, or in extreme cases, control entirely. Dooku has used this ability to tame a krayt dragon, one of the most formidable creatures in the entire galaxy. While most of his powers were offensive in nature, Tyrannus was not lacking defensively. A master of Tutaminis, Dooku was able to deflect lightning, and while never stated, I think it's safe to say blasters and other projectiles could be handled easily. He was also able to cleanse his body of poisons, if he could detect what the toxin was. His skill in this varies, as he was able to cleanse himself of the Keratos plague of Conquered Dawn, but unable to cleanse himself of a Night Sister poison, which neutralized his sight. Along with these powers, Dooku was able to use one of the derivatives of Force concealment, the Quaitek meditation. When properly applied and maintained, a Sith Lord, or Dark Jedi, could mask their own dark signatures, appearing completely benevolent to even the most powerful and alert Jedi. He used this ability often when visiting his master on Coruscant, and had enough knowledge to train Asajj Ventress in its art. Dooku's most obscure ability was his use of Sith sorcery. While having knowledge on the subject, he's only been seen using such powers in the presence of his master, leaving me to think he can't use this ability on his own. Much like his approach to lightsaber combat, Dooku's use of the Force was calculated and minimalist, instead of overpowering with raw strength. He possesses an impressive blend of combative and utilitarian powers, making him an incredibly dangerous opponent. Kyp Durron was one of the most gifted Force wielders in galactic history. Luke Skywalker himself noted the raw power in the boy was the most powerful light side Force presence he had known since Jedi Masters Obi-Wan Kenobi and Yoda. Like all Force users, Durron was able to use the Force to augment his inherited physical abilities, often his speed and strength. Kyp's go-to move in combat was his vicious use of telekinesis. He was able to create telekinetic waves, capable of knocking back armies of opponents. Lifting and moving large objects were also a breeze for the Jedi Master. In one instance, throwing a freighter on an army of Yuuzhan Vong to create an opening. In singular combat, he was able to rip through the strongest of Force shields, and even sent Grandmaster Luke Skywalker flying in the novel Jedi Academy, Jedi Search. Durron was also able to use this power defensively, able to create telekinetic bubbles, much like Darth Krayt did on Had Abandon. As a telepath, Kyp's abilities were also well developed. He was able to use the classical Jedi mind trick with incredible efficiency, and could rip information from a foe's mind, or project images with ease. While unable to use battle meditation, the New Jedi Order sourcebook credits Durron in the obscure power of Battle Mind. Battle Mind was a power wherein one's morale and fighting spirit was augmented through sheer focus, giving a user the drive to fight through even the hardest of conflicts. One could overcome the disabilities of old age, and even fading stamina. Users of Battle Mind could find themselves fighting with a great deal of fury, and also controlled passion, something Durron has displayed on multiple occasions. Also skilled in the rare art of precognition, Kyp, through the Force, could sense the occurrence of distant events, or receive a brief glimpse into the future. This gave him an edge in many battles, able to predict an opponent's move before they even attack. Durron was also skilled in the healing arts. While an impressive feat considering the difficulty of the healing arts, it's not something Kyp would be able to employ at a moment's notice, and would need time to utilize. If unable to heal himself, Durron could use Hibernation Trance, although its combative viability is all but useless. Another one of Kyp's more obscure abilities was Moricharo. Similar to a Force trance, Moricharo suspended biological functions, including breathing and heart rate. A trained Force wielder could turn the technique upon himself, surviving without food, water, or even air for periods of time, though it would not protect against vacuum. Kyp used this technique to lower the body temperature of himself, Jaina Solo, and their prisoner during the events of The Apprentice. Due to his apprenticeship under famed Sith Lord Exar Kun, Durron was also skilled in many dark side abilities, the most common being Force Lightning. While the magnitude in which he could employ this technique is unknown, considering Durron's overall power, I believe it was strong enough to kill. Perhaps Kyp's most interesting ability was his use of the Aura of Uneasiness. The Aura of Uneasiness was an ancient technique conjured through Sith magic that allowed an individual to proceed unabated by projecting a field of vague unease around themselves. This ability was also incredibly rare, and has only been used by a few prominent Force wielders throughout galactic history, including the Onderonian Sith warrior, Warb Null. While an impressive ability no doubt, Durron has never displayed its use in a serious duel, instead only using it on 2 separate occasions to keep creatures away. As stated earlier, Kyp was able to use his surroundings to great success. He was able to use the Force to alter the environment, the most glaring example being when he called down a lightning bolt to kill a Sith alchemically created Leviathan. At the end of the day, Kyp Durron had a variety of Force abilities that he took to their highest ability, and truly deserved his reputation as one of the strongest Force wielders of his day. This round is very interesting. Both Dooku and Durron have incredible strength in their use of the Force, and were regarded for their skills in this field. In terms of telekinesis, both possess incredible strength, able to ragdoll Force wielders and knock back armies with a mere gesture. The way in which they employ this ability is also dead even, and used it in a very accurate and calculated manner. Telepathically, neither will be able to influence the other's mind, as Jedi mind tricks are practically useless against other trained Force wielders. In their use of dark side abilities, both their attempts to use lightning would be met with the other using two to menace. Kyp's Aura of Uneasiness would be a very interesting factor in this fight. However, he has never before been seen using this ability in a serious lightsaber duel, and I don't think he's going to start now. In terms of healing, Dooku's ability to cleanse himself of poisons isn't really relevant, and Durron would need time to use the Force to heal his wounds, time he wouldn't have against the graceful attack of the Count. The biggest tool in this fight I see Dooku having is Force-based strangulation, but I can't see him being able to break through the strong defensive barrier that Kyp has. What really determines this round is Durron's overall raw power, combined with his skills in battle mind and precognition. His raw power is a tier above Dooku's in my eyes, and his ability to boost his own powers, combined with potentially seeing an attack in an already incredibly close saber fight, is a huge advantage for Durron. Also, while raw power isn't everything, 9 times out of 10 the more gifted combatant wins. A prime example of this can be seen in the battle between Shaak Ti and Galen Marek. While Shaak Ti matched and bested Marek on multiple occasions during the fight, Marek, due to his natural ability, was able to overpower and eventually finish the Jedi Master. At the end of the day, Kyp Durron's skills in battle mind and precognition, along with his superior power, grant him the edge. Kyp Durron gets the edge. Before we get into the verdict, let me start by saying this is probably the closest, if not the closest video I've ever had to call, right up there with my Arkin vs Anakin video. Also, if you haven't seen that, go check it out after this video. But anyways, let's first set up this fight. Let's say it happens in the Death Star hangar, with the winner winning a slight majority 6 out of 10 times. The two would engage, and Dooku, almost immediately, would attempt to achieve Dueling Mach, with little success. Their blades would ignite, and Durron would be the early aggressor, using his direct and calculated mastery of Form 5. He'd start with the lead, until Dooku recognized his style, and began switching things up. He'd attack, and lunge back, with Durron immediately attempting to counterattack and press his own offensive. I give the early fight to Dooku. His ability to read Durron's style would immediately grant him a slight edge. He himself wouldn't be gaining much ground, however, with Durron immediately counterattacking. The duel would initially be fairly short, both combatants realizing they would not be cutting down the other with pure martial might. Dooku would continue his hit-and-run attacks, until Durron, instead of counterattacking with his saber, turns to his mastery of the Force, with a huge Force push. Dooku would catch it at the last second, only taking a minor hit. The two would continue this pattern, but with different moves, incorporating pushes, pulls, and Force lightning. But once Durron began to use battle mind, his attacks would become faster, stronger, and even more precise, which is why he gains the edge in the mid-fight. As battle mind increases his already impressive traits, the tide turns in his favor. This portion of the fight would be the longest. It would appear as almost a graceful dance, one moving in with a slash, the other dodging or quickly matching his movement, all in cohesion with an advanced display of the Force. As the fight progresses, Dooku's physical liabilities begin to present a huge problem for the Sith Lord. Durron gets the edge here as well, as he is the only one capable of continuing to battle at a high level this late in the fight. Tyrannus was becoming fatigued, and his foe seemed to not be breaking a sweat. He quickly reaches for some debris and chucks it at the Jedi Master. Durron leaps over it and sends another huge telekinetic blast at the Count, who this time isn't quick enough and gets sent back. Kyp presses his attack and starts pounding away at Dooku. After a short clash, Dooku attacks and is immediately met with another counter that separates his arm from his shoulder. Falling to his knees, Durron's purple blade swings swiftly across his neck, beheading and ultimately ending the Sith Lord's life. This battle comes down to both Dooku's physical handicaps and Durron's advantage in the Force. I see this fight grossly similar to Dooku's final fight against Anakin. While for a while able to match the Chosen One, his stamina was one of the key contributors to his defeat according to the Revenge of the Sith novelization. Durron may attack with less aggression compared to Anakin, but his calculated power attacks served just as well. Skywalker also rarely incorporated Force powers into his sequences, unlike Durron, which adds another dimension to his attack. Dooku is not helpless in this fight, and could very well win this fight on multiple occasions in the early and mid-fight. I just don't see this fight being short whatsoever, and the longer it goes on, the more Kyp pummels him with force attacks, the more Dooku's physical prowess falters, the more and more likely that Kyp Durron beats him. I declare Kyp Durron, the embattled Maverick, the victor.